Polish president strips Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky of the highest state award. Kyiv issues an ultimatum to Belarus, and Europe decides not to rush into Kyiv's accession process. And to talk about it all, and hopefully more, we're joined by Roland Freudenstein, co-founder of the Brussels Freedom Hub. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
So Poland's president has decided to strip his Ukrainian counterpart of the Order of the White Eagle. That's the highest Polish state award, after Volodymyr Zelensky has given the name of the heroes of UPA, or UPA, if you will, to one of Ukraine's military units. Now, UPA, Ukraine's insurgent army, is responsible for the murder of more than 100,000 Poles during World War II. How would you comment on the presidential decision and its consequences?
Well, as a German, it's not so easy to comment upon this, but let's say it's complicated. I think Volodymyr Zelensky meant no harm to Polish-Ukrainian relations when he decided to name that unit. I think it was an internal gamble. It was to do someone or some group of Ukrainians favor, and the effect that it had on Poland and Poles' feelings about Ukraine was not calculated, definitely. And Ukrainians were quite surprised. Well, you know, now you can argue they shouldn't have been, because indeed, anybody who deals with Poland, and I've been there for many years, so anybody knows that Poles feel extremely strongly about this history of UPA and the massacres of Polish civilians. So, the Polish reaction was strong, and in fact, the feeling that something bad happened and should be revised was quite general in Poland, or at least the majority of Poles that I talked to feel that. But the question is how Poland should react, and here we had a pretty clear difference between the president and the parties that support him, and the prime minister and the coalition in power in Warsaw. So with the president actually now stripping Zelensky of this order, a reaction that I think Donald Tusk does not support, even though he is also outraged by the decision of the naming.
Right, but now that the damage is done, do you think that these current tensions may affect bilateral relations in the long run? And can they really serve Moscow's interests, especially, in the context of Ukraine seeking a fast track to join the EU?
Well, even President Nawrocki already said that this is not going to affect Poland's support for Ukraine in its war of defense against Russia. But indeed, he connected the question of coming to terms with painful chapters in history to the question of becoming a member of the European Union. Now, I don't think that this will become a condition for Ukrainian membership, but it will certainly influence Poland's enthusiasm or lack of enthusiasm when it comes to Ukraine accessing the European Union. And the fact that President Zelensky, sent back the order himself, I think alleviates Premier Tusk of the necessity to actually position himself in this question.
Right. Now, Ukraine was asking for additional $20 billion to, quote, make Russia burn, but its Western allies have pledged only $4 billion during the...
I can't hear anything.
We're having some issues with connection with Roland Freudenstein. Can you hear me now? Well, we're discussing current relations between Poland and Ukraine, and in the aftermath of Ukrainian president's decision to send back the Order of the White Eagle after the Polish president decided to strip him of the title. And I hear that Roland is back and can hear me now. So let me repeat my question. Ukraine was asking for additional $20 billion to, quote, make Russia burn. But its Western allies gathered at the last Ramstein forum meeting pledged only to give Kiev some $4 billion. Can Europe do more? And will it offer more? I mean, maybe at the upcoming NATO summit in Ankara, or is this the absolute ceiling? Is this all that Kiev can hope for?
Well, that remains to be seen. Honestly, I don't think we can predict at this point whether around the NATO Ankara summit we'll have any additional finance for Ukraine. I do believe that the European Union will eventually come up with more money. I mean, if you remember the debate in December and January about the loan to Ukraine, tapping into Russia's frozen assets would have yielded much more than the 90 billion that were eventually given, after all. So I think there is room for improvement in what the European Union can actually provide to Ukraine to fight Russia more effectively.
Now, what do you make of the controversies that emerged during the last EU summit, as EU leaders learned that Antonio Costa was seeking to open communication channels with Russia, apparently on his own?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, there was quite a heated exchange at the last council meeting. Merz and Macron were pretty upset about Costa's reaching out to the Russians. But frankly speaking, I don't think much has been lost here. Putin is not ready to negotiate. We all know this. So there is no question of immediately deciding who should speak for the European Union. And in any case, I mean, even Costa said that his contacts, or his office's contacts to the Kremlin were only to pave the way for a larger attempt to talk to the Russians, and that would only happen if Putin somehow signaled that he's actually ready to negotiate, and he hasn't given any sign of this in the last couple of months.
Right, because on one hand we have these declarations from part of European leaders that we should seek some diplomatic solution to the conflict in Ukraine with Russia. On the other hand, we hear that the time is not ripe yet. And finally, we learned that the EU failed to find a compromise on the issue for the last few months. Now, doesn't it position the whole bloc, as unable to come up with a coherent policy on the most pressing issue it has to face?
No, absolutely. I mean, but these difficulties are probably understandable because we're dealing with really important issues here. And I do think that it would be a good idea to forget about Europe mediating in any way between Russia and Ukraine. So the person or institution or country that convenes these negotiations cannot be Europe, because Europe's place is firmly at Ukraine's side and firmly making the same demands of Russia that Ukraine would make. So adding to this, of course, general ideas about a European security architecture of the future. I mean, that is the point where Europe could give some added value. Plus, of course, talking about European military presence in Ukraine after the conflict, the so-called security guarantees. I mean, this is something where you would also need and want Europeans at the table. But other than that, the Europeans should by no means go for some kind of mediating role, because that would make them tempted to pressure Ukrainians into some kind of deal, as we were afraid of for almost a year and a half from the Americans.
Roland Freudenstein, co-founder of Brussels Freedom Hub, was our guest this evening. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching, and stay with us for more interviews and news here on TVP World.